Hey designers, this is Kristen from Cut File Classroom, where I teach you how to design SVG cut files for Cricut, Silhouette, and other cutting machines. In this video, we're going to create an SVG file for a high chair banner in Adobe Illustrator. Since this banner would be for a baby's first birthday, it only has 3 pennants, but you could totally use the same steps to create additional pennants to make a full-size banner for birthdays, holidays, or any other kind of celebration. If you want to follow along, I'll put the link below where you can download the free Illustrator practice file, which includes this finished design, the color palette I'm using, and a few of the working stages for this design. I'll also include a link to the lovely font I've used for this design, which is called Martina. I'll go ahead and get started by selecting this design and pressing delete to clear my artboard. So now I have a nice clean artboard to work with. I'm going to start by creating the initial flag shape by pressing the M key on my keyboard to bring up the rectangle tool, which you can also find here in the tool panel on the side. And then with the rectangle tool selected, I'm just going to click once on my artboard, and that's going to bring up the rectangle dialog box. And I'm just going to uncheck this link here so I can enter in the specific dimensions that I want. And I'm going to create a rectangle that is 4 inches wide by 6 inches high. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now Illustrator has created a rectangle to my dimensions that I entered. And I'm going to go ahead and change this color to a cream color. As you saw, my finished design is geared for a little baby girl's first birthday. So I'm using a delicate palette with a cream and the soft little pink. And then this color here represents gold because the letters would be cut from a gold glitter cardstock. Okay, so now that I have my rectangle created, for the next step, I'm going to make sure that I have my smart guides turned on. So to do that, I'm going to come up to view and just make sure there's a check next to smart guides, and that's going to make this next step a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is I want to create like that dovetail flag shape, and to do that I'm going to place a new anchor point at the center of this bottom line. So I'm going to select the pen tool and just hover it over that bottom path. And now we can see the smart guides are indicating that I am directly in the center of this line. So I can go ahead and click to place that anchor point, and I can know that it's perfectly at the center of this shape. So the next thing I want to do to create that flag tail is to bump this point up exactly 1 inch. Now I could, use the arrow keys and just kind of nudge this up, or I could manually drag it and just kind of use the guides that are showing up there until I hit the 1 inch mark where I want it to be. But even quicker than all of that is to head to the transform panel, and in the y-axis, I can just add -1 to the end of that measurement that's already there and hit enter, and Illustrator is going to do that math for me, and it's going to bump that anchor point up exactly 1 inch where I'd like it to be. So now I have the base shape for my initial flag, and in the design I'm creating, I have a scalloped offset that goes around the outer edges of the shape. So to create that scalloped offset, I'm going to come to Object, Path, Offset Path. And I'm just going to create a very minor little offset. Here I have it at 0.05 inches. I'm going to leave the joins at miter and leave the miter limit at 4 and click OK. So what that did is it created a little offset here, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit so you can see it better. But now we have the original shape, which is this inner path, and then we have the offset shape, which is this outer path. And right now it's the same exact fill and stroke as the original shape, and I'm going to go ahead and change that. So I'm going to go ahead and press Shift X on my keyboard to swap the fill and stroke. So now I have no fill on that outer offset and a cream colored stroke. So I'm going to change that stroke color to a soft baby pink for my baby banner, and I'm going to increase the stroke weight to 60 points to create that scalloped offset. Now, just like many things in Illustrator, there are several different ways to create a scalloped edge around a shape. But in this case, the way I'm about to show you is the easiest and fastest way for this particular project, and it handles these corner points the best. So I'm going to come over to the stroke panel again, and I'm going to change the cap to a rounded cap, and I'm going to make sure that this dashed line is checked. And you can see my settings here from when I created the initial version, but the key here is to set your dash to 0, and then the gap you want to keep within 5 to 10 points of the stroke weight. So here I have a stroke weight of 60 points, so I have a gap of 50 points, which is 10 less. I can bump this up to 55, and we can see that that kind of spreads out the spacing between these circles. I liked the tighter spacing, so I'm going to go back down to 50, and we can see that that squeezes them in for a tighter scallop. So you can tweak that gap and your stroke weight as as needed to get the look that you like for your scalloped offset. But like I said, that's the fastest and easiest way, and it handles these corners very nicely. So now if I switch to outline mode, we can see that to Illustrator and to cutting machines, these are still just two straight lined paths, and a cutting machine would just cut this as a straight line path. It's not going to recognize that this is actually a scalloped edge. So we would need to expand this path to create an actual vector shape that follows the scalloped edge. Now, if you want your scallop offset to go all the way around the shape, then you would go ahead and expand your scallop path now. But for me, I would like to have the top edge of my scallop shape to be straight and flush to match the top of my flag. So to do that, I'm just going to double click on the scalloped edge so I can isolate it and make sure I'm working with just this shape. And then I'm going to grab the direct selection tool and select this path here at the top and click delete to delete it. Now I'm going to select these two anchor points at the top, and I'm holding shift as I drag down because I want to try to get the top of the circle to be level with the top of my flag. So once I've done that, now I can go ahead and expand these into vector shapes. So to do that, I'm going to come to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and that is going to convert everything into actual vector circle shapes. A lot of these are already combined or connected together, but I need to make sure that the rest are connected. So I'll head to the Pathfinder panel and click Unite. And now we've connected everything. And I see a few little spots here where they weren't quite connected. So I'm using the group selection tool, and I've just selected those, and now I'm going to delete them. And now we can also see that where the corners were has quite a lot of extra anchor points. So I'm going to right click and choose Simplify. And that's going to reduce the number of anchor points here. You can see my settings for Simplify Curve. I have at 95%, and then Corner Point Angle Threshold I have at 149. And that's doing a really great job of reducing the anchor points to just what we need to retain the shape of this design. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then now we can see that this is following like a weird W shape. It's not an enclosed solid shape that we would need to place behind our flag. So I'm going to use the direct selection tool and click the inner sides of these top two circles to select those paths. And I'm going to press delete to delete them. And this looks a little funny, but just stick with me. Now I'm going to select these top two anchor points with the direct selection tool, and I'm going to right click and choose Join. And that combines them to create a closed shape. Now we still have this inner portion that we need to delete. So I'm going to use the group selection tool to click on that inner path and just click delete, and that removes it. And now I have a solid scallop shape that I can layer this flag on top of. So if I pull this flag away, you can see that it is a solid scalloped shape that I can cut from cardstock and then layer this flag shape on top of it. So the next thing I need to do is make sure that the top edges of the flag and the scallop shape are aligned. So I'm going to use the Align panel and just make sure that those are aligned. So now the next thing I need to do is create the little hole cutouts where I would use to feed the ribbon or string through the pennant pieces to assemble the banner. So I'm going to press L on my keyboard to bring up the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to click once on my artboard. And I like to make my circle cutouts just a little under 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this to 0.2 inches, and I'm going to leave this linked to make sure that my width and height stay the same. And I'm going to click OK. And now Illustrator has created this little circle, and I'm going to make it a darker gray so we can see it against the flag shape, and I'm going to drag it over and place it on the upper corner of the flag. And I want to make sure it's not too close to either side because then it could tear with the string going through it. And then I'm just going to press Alt and Shift as I drag over the circle to create another copy on the other side. And then I'm going to select both of those circles and press Command or Control G to group them together. So now I want to make sure that these holes are aligned perfectly centered on this flag. And I'm actually going to just slide these over just to make it easier to see what's happening here. So when you want to align a shape to another shape, like for example, this flag is already in the position where I need to be. It's perfectly centered over my scallop offset. So typically when you just select two shapes and click align, it's going to shift them both and align them. So now the scalloped edge is off center and it just kind of throws everything off. So let me undo that. So what you want to do in these situations is align to a key object. So to do that, I'm going to select these circles and then I'm going to press Shift and select this flag shape. And now here you can see in the Align panel that Align to Artboard is highlighted by default. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this flag shape. So now we can see that this has jumped to Align to Key Object automatically just by clicking on that flag shape again. I've told Illustrator that this is my key object and I want these shapes to align to this shape, and this shape is going to stay where it is. So now I'm going to click the horizontal align center, and now we see again that those circles have jumped over to match where this flag is. And so everything has stayed exactly where I needed it to stay. Okay, so now the next step is to cut the circle shapes out of the flag shape. So kind of like a hole punch, I'm going to punch a little cutout into the flag shape. So again, I've got these circles selected and I'm actually going to press Command or Control C to make a copy of these to my clipboard before I begin, because I'm also going to need to make a cutout of these on the scallop offset as well. So I want to make sure I have the exact placement of these. So I've copied them and now they are on my clipboard. So now I'm going to press Shift to select the flag shape, and I'm going to come to Pathfinder and I'm going to choose minus front. So now we see that has punched a hole in the flag shape and we can see the pink scallop offset showing through. So now we need to do the same steps to punch holes in the scallop offset. So I'm going to press Command or Control F, it's paste in front, which pastes the circles that were on my clipboard exactly where they were previously. So now this time I'm going to press Shift and click on the pink scallop offset. So now I have the circles and the pink scallop offset selected. And I'm going to come to Pathfinder and click minus front again. So now we can see the white of the artboard is showing through the pink scallop offset. Now don't worry, this pink offset has jumped to the front. It's in front of the flag now. So we're just going to right click and choose Arrange, Send to Back, and it's going to send it back behind. So now we can see the little white holes because that's the white artboard that is showing through both of these layers. So when I cut these out, they will both have those cut out holes exactly aligned so that I can glue this piece on top of this piece and then thread my ribbon or string through to assemble the banner. Okay, so that's our flag shape that we've created, and now I can make copies of this to spell out the number 1. So with this flag selected, I'm going to press Alt as I click and drag to make a copy. Again, I'm going to hold Shift to make sure I'm keeping it nice and straight. And then I'm going to press Control or Command D to make another copy that is exactly the same spacing as my original. So like I said, if you're creating a full birthday banner, you can just keep creating as many copies as you need to spell out the word happy birthday or the person's name or whatever occasion that you're celebrating. And now I can go ahead and add my text to this banner. So I'm going to press T on my keyboard to bring up the type tool. And I'm going to click once and that brings up some dummy text, but I'm going to go ahead and type in the word that I want, which is the number 1. And the font I'm using here is called Martina, and I've got the link down below so you can download this font if you like it. And now I need to be able to work with these letters individually as vector shapes, so I'm going to expand them into outlines. But before I do that, I'm going to just make a copy of the live text over to the side of the artboard. And I always do that whenever I'm working with text in a design, because now I can come back and I can remember what font that I used for the design, and I can make any changes or edits. If they want a banner with the child's name on it, I can use that same font and not have to go digging and trying to find out what font I used. So now I'm ready to expand this into outlines. So you can come up to Type, Create Outlines, or you could press Command or Control Shift O on your keyboard, and that will also turn your text into outlines. So now we have our text that has been turned into vector shapes, and we can see that there are quite a lot of extra anchor points here that we don't need. So again, I'm going to right click and choose Simplify. And because I had retained my latest settings checked over here, it's going to keep my settings from last time, which are doing a great job at reducing those anchor points. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now I'm using the letter O as my guide and placing it over that first flag. And then I'm going to select the N and the E, and I'm just going to bump up the size a little bit just so it doesn't look like such a drastic change, because the letters are so separated on these flags. And then I'm just going to drag these over and place the letters. Oops. I'm going to right click and ungroup. And then now I can drag this over and place those letters on their respective flags. And I'm going to give these letters a golden color because I want to cut them from a gold cardstock. So now I can just kind of play around with the placement of the letters to get them where I want them to be on the flag. Now this part is really just for my own visual reference, because these pieces would actually cut as separate shapes from pieces of cardstock, and then I would need to assemble them manually. Okay, so again, I'm just using the key object alignment that I showed you earlier to make sure that these letters are perfectly centered on the flags. And once I get it the way I like it, now our banner is done, and I can go ahead and save this out as an SVG to upload in my cutting software. So I always do save as for my SVGs, and I'm going to give this file a name. Let's call it High Chair Banner. And then I'm going to choose the format as SVG. I always use artboards when I'm exporting, and this is the first artboard, so I have the number 1 in here. So I'm going to click Save. These are my settings that I use for SVGs, and I include these settings in my Designer's Guide to Error-Free SVGs. It's a free download, which also includes tips that will help prevent errors in your SVGs. So if you're having some trouble where your SVGs are opening up in cutting software with different kinds of errors and problems happening, you can check out that free download, and 9 times out of 10 you'll find the answer to your problem so that your SVG can upload without errors. I'll put the link for you in the description below. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now I'm going to open up Cricut Design Space and upload that file so we can see how it looks. So here we have our finished banner in Design Space, and one of the things that I love about designing cut files in Adobe Illustrator is you don't get the same size issues that you have with designing in other vector programs. So when you design in some other vector programs like Inkscape or Affinity Designer, a lot of times you'll have some size issues when the file gets opened up in Design Space or even Silhouette Studio or Brother Scan and Cut software. But with Adobe Illustrator, the file stays the same exact size. You don't have any of those size issues. As we can see here, I have the flag shape selected, and if you remember in the beginning, we sized this flag to be exactly 4 inches by 6 inches, and that is the size that it's showing up here in Design Space. So Illustrator makes it really easy for size-dependent designs like this to open up exactly the size that you need them to be without the user needing to tweak or resize or do any kind of changes. So right now this file is just ready to be cut as is, and it's going to cut perfectly the size that I need it to be. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that here we can see that the edges of this design are hanging over the artboard. And in this case, that's totally fine. And as you saw, it imported into Design Space correctly. As long as all of the elements of your design are on the artboard, like this edge can hang over and this edge can hang over, but as long as there's some of the object on the artboard, it's going to include it in your design when you export. If, however, I had this banner piece hanging off the edge, it would include this piece, but the letter E would get left off of my design. So you just want to be careful with that and just make sure that you have everything included on the artboard. If something does hang off, let's say you have a big wide banner with happy birthday spelled out or something, you can press Shift O, and then you could extend the borders of the artboard to fit your design, and then you can keep the correct sizing of your design, and it would include everything that's within the artboard as long as you have artboards checked. So that's it. That's our birthday banner. If you'd like to learn more about designing SVG files for cutting machines, head over to Cut File Classroom and be sure to download my free designer's guide to error-free SVGs. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and feel free to drop any questions or requests for videos that you'd like to see in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.